Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Welcome to my presentation. We have heard a lot about chatbots today, and I decided that a very fitting title to present something about summarization is actually using something from a series where a computer is talking to a computer. This is from Star Trek Next Generation, where Data is requiring the computer of the Enterprise to summarize something. And as far as I understand from all the talks in the chatbots, we're not yet there where Data is supposed to be. We also saw a very interesting video earlier today. But I will try to tell you how well or not so well we cope with the topic of summarization. So my talk will be briefly split into three topics. I will first give a bit of background. So why are we actually dealing with summarization? Sounds very boring. And then I will go into what methods have been developed so far and try to give you an idea how people are approaching the topic of automatic summarization. And then I will look into a project that is currently going on and that I am a part of, where we are trying to move summarization a bit further at least. So, the problem is, and I think all of you can relate to this picture, there is just a lot of information out there. We just can't help it. When we are looking for something, we're Googling for something, and we get tons of results back. And we're basically flooded with things, even if we're just sticking to the academic area. There are research papers coming out by dozens every day, and we have to keep track of what is going on there. And that is a huge problem that we are faced with, and that's where the aim of having something that can automatically help us with that is actually very, very attractive. But the problem, as noted here, this is a citation by someone who was working in the area of scientific literature summarization. He phrased that the preparation of abstracts is an intellectual effort requiring general familiarity with the subject. To bring out the salient points of an author's argument calls for skill and expertise and experience. Consequently, a considerable amount of qualified manpower that could be used to advantage in other ways must be diverted to the task of facilitating access to information. This widespread problem is being aggravated by the ever-increasing output of technical literature. But another problem, perhaps equally acute, is that of achieving consistency and objectivity in abstracts. Abstracts in this context means summaries. And what he points out here is that summarization is an intellectual effort. It requires domain knowledge, and currently this can be only provided by humans, at least in that way. And so people could actually do other things instead of doing abstracts. And another huge problem is that if I would hand out one document to each and every one of you, I would probably get somewhere between 10 and 20 different summaries back. All of them are equal. They are not wrong. It's just that they are different because everyone has a different viewpoint. And so that's also another problem, and that we want to address when we do automatic summarization, that we achieve consistency and objectivity. And this was observed in 1958 by one of the first authors that actually tried to do automatic summarization way back then. He faced a lot of other problems that we thankfully overcome, because at that time we didn't have any digital texts available, so we're a bit further there. But the problems still stay the same. So, what has been going on in the past 60 years? And I will primarily focus on the past 15 years. So in order to create automatic systems that can address something, people normally tend to say, okay, we need some reference data. We had the topic earlier about how golden is your gold data, and we have that problem in even higher dimension in summarization, because as I mentioned, everyone produces different summaries. But there has been some efforts in the context of the so-called DUC and TAG challenges, document understanding and text analysis conferences, to provide reference data for automatic summarization. So they basically, what they did was they took, if I find my mouse, then everyone can see what I'm trying to point to. So they took documents that are from a specific topic, on a specific topic, and collected several of them, something like 10. And then they created individual summaries on each and every one. So we had single document summaries, which was good. And then based on them, they created multi-document summaries of specific length, shortened them to create a shorter version and an even shorter version and another short version. So that's how we got reference data. So we could start evaluating and developing our systems and happily create automatic summaries. And the methods that were developed in these past 15 years, there are various. So of course, we need baselines. Hopefully, baselines that we can very easily improve on, because everyone is happy when they can beat a baseline. One of the baselines was just taking random sentences from a sentence. Fair enough, easy to beat. Another baseline was taking the first 100 words in a document and compare that to a 100-word automatic summary. Now that was the point where people got very frustrated, because the data they were using was news data, newspaper articles. And they were trying to do single document summarization. And if you think about a very general newspaper article, and you consider the first 100 words, that's as good a summary as you can get. So bad luck. Baseline was hard to beat. That's why a lot of people said, okay, stop doing single document summarization, we focus on multi-document summarization, it's easier to beat the baseline. As I mentioned, that even already in late 50s and late 60s, people were trying to do automatic summarization. Loom was one of them, and he was actually looking into how many words occur in a document and how many different words occur in a document. Try to find out which of these words are actually telling you something about the concept of things that this document is about. It would later be called TF-IDF, but it was a first approach in that respect. And someone who followed up on it, Edmondson, he was looking for something like cue phrases. When you have in a document something like, in summary, we found that, blah, 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 blah. So that's a good point where you can start your summary. So those were the historical methods. But people wanted to do more, be a bit more intelligent in their methods. So one of the methods that were developed are based on lexical chains. And lexical chains, which were introduced first by Morris and Hurst in 1991, and they actually created lexical chains manually using a Rosetta-saurus. So they sat down and really marked the chains in a document. And then these lexical chains group sets of words, nouns that are semantically related. In the most easiest case, it's just the same word occurring over and over again, but you can also use synonyms, hyponyms, etc. And they can be used to identify important concepts in a document. And then can also be used to disambiguate. So you know that if you're talking about a bank and a park, or a bank as a financial institution, which one of those you actually have. For those of you who are not familiar with the concept of lexical chains, here's a very, 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 very short example that shows that we have the lexical chain Renault, car, garage, Renault, in this 3-sentence document here, with the respective relations between the various words. And that provided actually quite good results, but the problem was that these lexical chains were working only in one document, so you couldn't go across documents, at least at that time. So while lexical chains are certainly valuable to find also topics within, especially longer documents, because chains might be interrupted, they focus on one document. So there's the problem that you can't go across. But they were working pretty fine and were achieving good results. So they were used quite frequently. Another one a lot of methods in summarization are actually coming from information retrieval. So another one was the maximal marginal relevance. In multi-document summarization, we have a problem that when we have a document collection on a specific event, let's take the UK elections from yesterday, they are reporting all about the same event. So some sentences will reoccur in one variant or another, and they're highly relevant. But we don't want to have a 100-word summary that repeats the same sentence, right? So we want to have the relevant stuff, but we want to get rid of the redundant stuff. And that's what this maximal marginal relevance takes into account, that it considers sentences that are relevant, but discards them if they are already in the summary, and tries to avoid redundancy in that way. Was also fairly good system, still works fairly well, and has also been used, for example, for query-based summarization. I will come to that in a minute. Something else that comes from the domain of information retrieval is so-called LexRank algorithm, which is actually a variant of, some of you might know it, PageRank. So what you do is you consider a document or sentences in a document collection as a graph. And then you try to find those sentences that are the most central in our collection. Looks a bit like that for few sentences. Of course, if you have real collections, then this graph is bigger, and then you couldn't see anything in the slide. So this is a smaller version of it. And it actually shows that you have sentences from a specific document, document 1, sentence 1, document 2, sentence 1. They're apparently very, very similar, so probably the same sentence. And so this graph actually shows how all of these sentences are related to each other. And then, of course, there were all variants of machine learning-based methods. Basically, trying to define in handcrafted feature versions, trying to define features that tell you what is important. How can you define an important sentence? And then they were going back a lot to like past publications where the position was found to be very important, etc. But when we use machine learning, we have a huge problem in summarization. We have a massive class imbalance problem because you have a lot of sentences in your original data, and you have few sentences in your summaries. That's one thing. The other thing is that, especially with supervised machine learning, how do you know which sentence in the summary was the original sentence in your source documents, especially when humans created a summary and created that in their own words? You have quite a big problem to find the respective sentences to actually label your data. So it works quite well, yes, but you have to be careful how you create your training data. These are some of the features that have been defined in the feature-based approaches. So for example, looking for phrases, as I mentioned earlier, looking at the position within the document. Uppercase words works in English, doesn't work in German. Finding important words, but also looking, for example, at the length of a sentence, because very short sentences will probably not provide a lot of information. And of course, recently, people have been also working with deep learning methods a lot, but not with a lot of success. So we're still working on that. And then people were thinking, okay, what tasks do we want to solve? Because at first, they just wanted to get the most important things, generic summarization, right? But then they realized, well, it's not actually what people want. Normally, when they want to have a summary, they have some kind of question in mind, or they want to solve a task. So generic summarization was not ideal. And so people in Duck and Tech came up with all kinds of tasks. So for example, update summarization. So you already know something, and then you get some new data, and you just want to know what is the new stuff. Because when you think of newspaper articles, there are some newspaper articles, and then just 1 week or 2 weeks later, there's new development on something. and then they start repeating what has happened 2 weeks earlier. But you already know that, right? So you don't want to bother with that old stuff. Topic and query summarization are related. They want to know something like what is something or who is someone, and they want to have an answer for that. Opinion summarization, there was a poster on this aspect-based summarization. Goes in that direction. So you have some documents that are opinionated in one way or another, and you want to know what are the opinions on specific topic expressed in the documents. And then went on towards saying, okay, we have various aspects, for example, in reviews on a product, and we want to summarize those aspects. And evaluation is a huge problem. Evaluation still is a huge problem in summarization. Because what you have when you create manual summaries is so-called abstracts. But all these machine-based methods, they work extractive. So they pick parts of the document, put them together, and then they provide that as the final summary. And then you have abstracts and you have extracts, and then you basically compare apples with pears. And so people were thinking, okay, how can we improve the situation on evaluation? And we're actually asking for new methods to improve the topic of evaluation, which was not very successful because we still use the very, very first evaluation methods, and methods that have been developed in this context are hardly used. I've also mentioned multilingual summarization. Do not be confused. It does not mean we have a document in English, one in French, one in Italian, and one in German, and we try to summarize them. But we still have 10 documents in German, we want to summarize them. We have 10 documents in English, we want to summarize them. It just means that we would like to have systems that can deal with several languages, but only with one language at a time. So those were all tasks that have been addressed in this, in the course of these challenges. But, as usual, there is a big gap between what people do in research and what the reality is. So what they were looking at were something like clusters of 10 documents per topic. And these 10 documents were newspaper articles. So some event, and then you had 10 articles. One was from New York Times, one from Washington Post, San Francisco Chronicle, Reuters, Associated Press, etc. But still newspaper articles. And even when they went for opinion summarization, they just took blogs, which might also be due to the fact that it was in 2008, and we didn't have Twitter at that time, and Facebook was not that big, etc. But in reality, when you try to think of how you search for information, and with what information sources you're faced with, we end up here again, right? Because you look at scientific literature, you look at blogs, you look at various newspaper articles, etc. So your news sources or your information sources are just as heterogeneous as can be. And so what we are currently doing in a research project that I'm part of is called IFES, Adaptive Information Extraction from Heterogeneous Sources, is that we try to address exactly this issue. We don't just look at newspaper articles when we want to find something out. We look at whatever information we can get. But analyzing that automatically is a huge challenge, because the methods that we developed so far for single document genre don't work with this heterogeneous data. Plus, research so far in summarization was on English, and then some more on English, and still English. And then there was a bit on Arabic, a bit of Chinese, and a bit of Japanese. And that's where the story ends, pretty much. So we are trying to actually do summarization for German data for a change. And what we have been thinking was that in order to come up with new solutions to this problem, we first need to create some document collection, because so far nobody has done something in heterogeneous document collections. So we were trying, or we are currently also still trying to put together a collection of heterogeneous document sources. And then we don't want to just take everything that's out there. There is a lot out there, and a lot of it is not good. So we also want to come up with methods to assess the quality of what we are dealing with. And then we want to use computational linguistics, natural language processing methods to analyze these documents and see what is actually in there. And not only on the surface level, counting words, etc., but really looking into the structures. And that means also, for example, looking at lexical chains and see whether we can actually use lexical chains across documents, not only within documents. And doing, for example, coreference resolution, not only on one document, but across documents. And then create something that could be considered a summary. But the most important thing is that they should be adaptive to a user. Because we don't think that it makes sense to have one system, that's it. But something, I think that was also in one of the presentations earlier, something that adapts to a user. And ultimately, reaches something that we could call intelligent writing assistance, so that we do not provide a ready-made summary, because one user might be interested in one aspect of the document collection, but in the next moment might want to look into another aspect in more detail, and to support actually the writing task. And that's why we look a lot into these adaptive methods, so that we can actually consider various scenarios based on the same data. And what we had in mind are so-called online journalists, who work under a lot of time pressure and are faced with a lot of data, and they have to come up with an article very quickly. And so that was the scenario, is the scenario that we have in mind. In order to achieve that, which is quite complicated, we joined forces with a lot of people from various areas. So we have computational linguistics people, we have NLP people. The computational linguistics people, they look into things like coreference and event resolution, but they also look into things like sentiment. Whereas the NLP people, they're trying to put things together to come up with summarization methods. And then we have the core computer science people, the network analysis and machine learning people, that are trying to find ways of actually doing this adaptation. And then finally, area D is the information management part that actually looks into the quality of the whole thing. So what are the input documents? What quality do they have? And as I mentioned earlier, evaluation is a huge problem, trying to come up with methods to evaluate and to judge the quality of what is actually coming out of this whole thing. And one of the things that I want to go into more detail is our first step in trying to create a heterogeneous document collection and providing reference summaries, very old-fashioned way. So we wanted to create something, as I mentioned before, when humans create a summary, they create an abstract. But machines create an extract. And so the question is, how do we compare that? And we wanted to create something that is somewhere between an extract and an abstract. And that's why we came up with this quite elaborate annotation scheme, where in the end we had reference summaries that were as extractive as possible, but still as nice text-wise as possible. So first we needed to define what we called nugget. Nugget, something like summary content unit, which answers the question what is important in the topic context. They can be as long as a sentence, shouldn't be longer than a sentence, but they could also be just a verb and a noun, so very short. And that's what we defined as a nugget. And we told our annotators to just select nuggets. If they are important, For the document and for the topic, pick it. Don't care about redundancy, we take care of redundancy later. This is an example from the German documents that we have. We're working with educational information, and this is a debate in Germany whether schools should take, or high school should be 8 or 9 years. And no matter whether it has already been marked or not, things should be marked. And you can imagine that you just go with a yellow marker through the document. Just mark everything that is important. And then group everything together so that you see, okay, what information is in there. So that you actually see what is redundant. So that you don't have to do everything at once. You do it step by step. And that reduces the cognitive load for the annotators. And after this grouping, you could select the most representative of these documents and say, of these sentences or nuggets, to represent this information piece. And we address the issue that, well, sometimes you have an important sentence, it's just he or she in there. And you want to know which he or she that was. So we decided we don't do a full coreference resolution. We leave that to computational linguistics people. We just take those references that occur in our nuggets, and we take care of those. And then reformulate the whole thing, because in the end, we have these nuggets that are not necessarily sentences. They can be sentences. But in order to have sentences, they have to be reformulated. And we wanted to have them reformulated with as little change as possible. And then the final summary is a text on its own. It can stand as a text on its own. But because we know from which document and in which part the original nugget actually came from, we can go back there. And so if someone is interested in a specific aspect, so for example the situation in Hamburg, they can go back to specifically those documents that cover the situation in Hamburg, based on this summary. Now this is part of what we've done so far, and probably most of you will laugh when I tell them that this heterogeneous document collection has 30 topics, containing between 5 to 15 documents each, with at least 10,000 tokens per document. But that was our first step. We wanted to have high quality data, and high quality data doesn't come in vast amounts, unfortunately. But so far, and feel free to check our GitHub page, we created 2 corpora, 2 heterogeneous corpora, one in English, one in German. We published our annotation framework, the MDS writer, and we have various pre-processing tools that we use to create the data and that can be used as open source. So if you're working with German and you have German web data specifically, then maybe our segmenter might be a good idea, because it's specifically developed for web-based German data. So currently, that's what has been published, that has been done. Currently, we are trying to create a more representative document collection with 50 to 100 documents per topic, which we feel is more realistic. But the problem is that we still fight with a couple of questions and a couple of challenges that we try to address, that we're currently trying to address. And that is, how can you create a reference summary for that in order to evaluate whatever your automatic methods are doing? Then the question is, do we actually need reference summaries? Or can we work it out somehow other? Is there another way we can represent the data, the information that is in all of these documents that still help a user to understand and get a feeling for what is in there? Just think back about the Panama Papers about a year ago. where they were faced with tons of PDFs, emails, Excel, etc. And had to get an idea what is in there. So is there another way to present that data to someone who wants to analyze this amount of data? And this is what we are currently working on. So stay tuned for any updates. Feel free to get in touch or to visit our webpage. And I can't stop here because there are a lot of people that I have to thank. First of you for your attention, but then everyone in IFES, at the Technical University in Darmstadt, at the University in Heidelberg, who are working on that topic, and the various students who annotated the data and created all that stuff, and actually allow us to publish here and me to be here. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Margot, for this nice overview. I think I start with my first question. Is it solved? I mean, you talked a lot about future,
yes.
So it's not solved yet. No. But we saw in the talk of Peter Segard this 3 steps, yes. Problems which are solved, problems which we have good solutions, and problems where we don't have any idea.
Yeah.
So for how long will it stay there?
So some of the methods that I showed in the second part, there are implementations out there that can be used for some languages at least. But you always have to be careful what you feed it. So for news articles, I guess we can say it's pretty much solved. If you don't need something, say, fancy. But if you start to go into other data, and especially heterogeneous data, still a lot of question marks. So as I did not develop that tool that provides a whole set of implementations, I can give you the link. It's on GitHub, and it's freely usable. I'm using it in experiments, but it only covers parts of the issues.
Other questions?
Here, what is your tool delivering? A list of ranked sentences to be summarized?
My tool?
Yes.
So we so far have developed a tool for annotation. Some people in IFES are working on creating tools for creating summaries, but that's not published yet.
Okay, so you don't deliver a list of scored sentences and...
You mean the data set?
No, your tool.
The tool is an annotation tool, so you can use it, you can plug data in, and people can mark sentences that are important and phrase them and rephrase them, group them, etc. That's what the tool does.
Other questions?
I was wondering whether it's too late.
No. Yeah, just shy.
Thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, how do you transform nuggets into sentences?
Well, that's fairly easy. I can show you with the example that I had earlier. So basically, you see this sentence, well, not sentence, this is a nugget, which is almost a sentence. And so basically, in this case, it's enough to just move the verb a bit. So basically, what you do here is you remove the verb here, and you move it here, and then you have a sentence out of it. And
so you do it manually?
This is still manual. This is still a manual process. But so the IFES group is big, so I always have to think who. But there's one guy who's looking into how paraphrasing actually works and how we can get from one sentence or sentence-ish thing to a real sentence, and how people are actually paraphrasing and wants to come up with a solution for that also automatically.
Okay, thank you.
One question. The nuggets,
Yes.
is there any research regarding what a nugget entails and how its linguistic structure looks like?
Yes, I mean, we looked into the literature, and there is some literature, for example, by Annie Nenkova, in the context of the pyramid evaluation. She calls them summary content units, that are some kind of elements that are in a summary, and that can be, as I said, up to a sentence, but they can also be parts of a sentence, but at least a noun and a verb to have something. So he walks, so, at least to have some information in there. It can't be just a single word.
Thanks.
I think, yeah. Lady here in front.
Thank you for the presentation. I was just thinking about the evaluation and how that should be a bit linked to the personalization process, because as you mentioned, there is something which is maybe more interesting than summarization and is intelligent writing assistance, because we always want to transfer this information to someone, and that someone can be a kid, can be a researcher or not, and we need to adapt our message to it. And well, the evaluation should take this into account, because otherwise you would evaluate it in a, let's say, a very generic manner.
That's true. The problem is that the evaluation there is very, very time-consuming, and also very, how do you say, it takes a lot of effort, both time and person-wise, manpower-wise. That's why for now, at least, we have to rely on these generic automatic methods that are, well, as bad as they are, because everyone knows that they are bad, but everyone still uses them because they allow you to judge it. But ultimately, yes, we would have to go a step further and evaluate it really with the people that actually are using it, and then really finding out how they are using it and how they interact with the system. That's definitely something we have to do, and that we are already thinking about. But for that, we have to have a system working first.
Sure. And I was thinking, since when we're transmitting a message, we're like kind of mapping a message into a universe, maybe we can model that somehow, like how we would explain something to a kid, what is the vocabulary in that domain, let's say, or for a journalist. And then we're trying to map like a message from one domain to another, so that we can transmit that in a better way. And then we can evaluate that based on what your reference is in a certain vocabulary, how do you express a certain message.
Yeah, then you would have to have the reference data, so the vocabulary. So say, for example, a document or a summary on the discussion about school in Germany that is for a journalist, for a researcher, for a kid, for a pupil, for a parent, for a teacher, so all kinds of groups. So you would have to create the same document for these variants.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
We will need like to take a very generic corpus and then try to adapt to a certain characteristics of our users, which is a different research problem.
Yeah, definitely is.
One last question, I think.
So with this with labeling of nuggets, did you do any research if different people do this labeling on the same document? How much do they agree what the nugget is?
So there is a lot of data on that. So if you just tell people, summarize this please, just as the title says, you will achieve an inter-annotator agreement that's horrible. It's somewhere around, I think if it's really, really good, it's somewhere around .4. That's why we deliberately set up this procedure to actually guide the people very strictly. And there we at least achieved an inter-annotator agreement in the high .60, so .67 or something, which is considerably better. Not great, but at least better. So it always depends on how you phrase the task to be done. And if it's a very strict way, then you can get people to agree on the most important parts at least.
So Margot, thank you once again. You also get this obligatory wine from us. I hope you enjoy it.
Once I explain it free, I might.
Yeah.